the Omen encounter. I am your one and only caster for this evening, Sifa. Happy to be here. So, obviously, before we start, big thanks to HP and Intel for putting on this wonderful, wonderful tournament. If you guys haven't already, be sure to go over there to omen.gg and vote. Help support the tournament, help support your favorite team. But let's jump right into picks and bans. Blitzcrank, the first ban coming out for Trick2g squad. No surprise there. I am Matt Life, obviously a very well-known hook champion. And in case I didn't tell you already, Trick2g versus Voyboy, first teams we're going to be looking at. Rek'Sai on the opposite side, banned away from RF Legendary. RF Legendary has shown in the past that he's a very proficient at this champion, uses it in the top lane, combines the Rek'Sai ultimate with teleport so that he pretty much can be anywhere on the map that he needs to be at any given moment. Akalia banned away there. Voyboy's going to be playing in the mid lane, so that could be something to take away from him. And then we have obviously a little bit of a mix-up from the rosters. We did see a Zingy subbing in for the jungle. Ethel is ADC. And then we can assume that Sicko Scott is going to be playing top lane tonight. Akali ban, pretty standard assassin. Does really, really well if she can get ahead. Obviously just a respect ban for Voyboy. Udyr banned away from Trick2g himself. No surprises. Obviously, that guy's very, very good. We did see him play a couple other champions last week, namely Volibear and Jax. His Volibear suffering a little bit as Jax jungle carrying his team pretty hard, and you can tell Voyboy's team is going to come into this one a little bit more cautiously. Last week, of course, they were undefeated until they ran into Trick2g's team. Their only loss so far, they are still 5-1. Very dominant in the past, but this is a new week with new teams. RF Legendary Trick2g still together, though. That's one of the strongest synergies we've seen in the tournament so far, so it'll be interesting to see how those guys play together without their two favorite champions. Janna banned away as well. This is a pretty standard ban. Janna is known as the most powerful support at this point in the meta. Veigar banned away from Strompist, a champion he's obviously very comfortable on. It's doing pretty well. RF Legendary immediately takes Thresh. Kind of surprised we didn't see it banned away from I Am Matt Life, but this is why they wanted to first pick it. So it'll be interesting to see who this does go to. 9JX is a jungler, so exactly what they're going to do with it, not entirely sure exactly who's going to go where, but if they are in LCS order, it would imply that 9JX is going to be playing support, and this will go to him. Might be really tough for him to use it against I Am Matt Life, though. Despite the fact that I Am Matt Life does not have a champion he is comfortable on, he will pretty much be able to predict all of those hooks because he's just a champion that he has experienced so much playing against and playing with as far as Thresh goes. Voyboy's team still hesitating to make a pick here. Are they going to go with something aggressive? Are they going to try to secure some of these powerful top laners in patch 421 or powerful AD carries? We do see the Corki hovered over there. Lissandra, Gnar are both open, so is Rumble. So a lot of very powerful teamfight top laners that I would expect to see going. You could also see a counter pick for the bot lane at this point. It's not exactly clear what's going to happen here. Annie picked as well. Maybe Caster's Curse, of course, as I'm about to say something. Gragas picked up there. Not a champion we've seen a whole lot of. We did see it a little bit in the top lane in the OGN preseason with some pretty solid results, so I'm wondering if that's where it's going to go. On the opposite side, we see Azir immediately locked in from Strompist. No surprises there, despite the fact that Azir's early game is a little bit lacking in damage. He does have that reliable range, which allows him to farm safely, and of course, the late game is just so strong. Nidalee locked in as well there. For RF Legendary, banning Rek'Sai is a good choice, but I think that Rek'Sai's been out for 2 weeks, and RF Legendary's been playing Nidalee as a Nidalee main for so many months. So, he is going to be incredibly proficient on that champion, and I feel bad if that's a Gragas top lane for them going into that lane, because Nidalee is just such a powerful lane bully, and even if she doesn't offer as much to a team in a team fight, she can do incredibly well in these kind of 1v1 top lane situations, and obviously a very, very good solo queue champ. It'll be interesting to see if RF Legendary can use it as well as he has in the past. Still no picks coming out from Voyboy's side yet. It'll be interesting to see what they decide to go with. Obviously, they picked this Gragas. It could be a support Gragas for all we know. It could be a mid Gragas. It could be a top Gragas. That's a pick we've seen. Even a jungle Gragas. When Gragas was popular, he could pretty much go anywhere. Not something we've seen a whole ton of. A Zingy hovering over the Karthus. This could be a Karthus jungle, and it looks like it probably is. So I'm guessing at this point it's going to be Voyboy in the mid lane with that Yasuo, and then top lane it's going to be Gragas, and then probably jungle Karthus. Lots of AP coming out from this side, lots of poke, and then, of course, a lot of all-in team fight for the opposite side at this point. So Zerbic hovering over Graves, 9JX on that Jax pick. That Jax will probably go to Trick2g. As I mentioned previously, that is a champion he's very comfortable with and showed pretty good results with last week. Did much better than his Volibear, despite the fact that his Volibear is a more played champion. But I think it's difficult in these ranked 5 situations to play a champion like Volibear, who is so easy to kite. And if a team has good communication, it's really hard for Volibear to engage. Whereas Jax, regardless of your communication, he's always going to be able to leap in there, and he's always going to be able to provide that stun. Zerbic does look like he's going to be picking up the Graves, could hover over and change at the last second, but that's known as kind of a counter matchup for Corki. Obviously, Graves has that excellent attack speed steroid, has excellent burst damage there, and with those minor nerfs to Corki's, the changes to his phosphorus bomb especially, he might be able to take that lane out pretty easily, especially when he has a Thresh player backing him up. It's some pretty solid hard engage. On the opposite side, we see Ethel hovering over this Maokai. Maybe it is going to be a Gragas support. It would not entirely surprise me. Maybe this is something that I Am Matt Life has practiced before, that he feels like he can pick into a Thresh lane. He is kind of one of the undisputed masters of solo queue when it comes to Thresh, and I'm sure that he has something tricky up his sleeve. I think it's much more likely that it's Gragas support than Maokai support at this point, but Maokai, obviously a very strong, very, not the most exciting top laner, but definitely does really, really well in just about any situation because he's always going to be able to sustain, and he's always going to be able to farm relatively easily with the Saplings. So pretty solid matchup. I'm guessing that the early game is going to go in favor of RF Legendary here, but it'll be interesting to see exactly how it plays out. Once again, these roles aren't 100% defined, but we do know Ethel and Zerbic are both going to be playing AD carry. Most likely what's going to happen is that 9JX will be playing the support Thresh to pair with it, and of course, this is hopefully, I'm guessing that Trick2g, Mr. Darude Splitstorm, in case you guys weren't familiar with that Smurf name, is going to be taking Jax into the jungle. So on the opposite side, as Zingy, of course, carts this jungle, I Am Matt Life, the legendary Gragas support, Sicko Scott in the top lane with that Maokai pick, Voyboy in the mid with Yasuo, Ethel on ADC, as I mentioned previously. So lots of ways to enable Yasuo's ultimate. We've got, obviously, Gragas with his ultimate himself, and Sicko Scott with that Maokai Q. So definitely really, really solid team comp coming out from Voyboy, but I think on the opposite side, we have a lot more comfort picks coming out from the side of Trick2g's team, and we're pretty quickly approaching that 3-minute spectator delay, so if you guys have a second, make sure to head on over to OMEN.gg and vote. You can vote for which team captain you'd like to see and which drafting order, and basically that'll ensure that people get lots of consistent first picks, especially Trick2g, who appears to be very, very attached to RF Legendary at this point, and they have really solid synergy, and I'm excited to see exactly how this works out. But we'll take a quick commercial break here, about 2 minutes, and we'll be back. Excited to cast the games for you. We'll see if we can grab another caster on the way. If not, you guys will be stuck with me. Ha, ha, ha. All right. See you in a bit. Welcome back, everybody, to Game 1. In Week 3 of the Omen encounter, we do see a pause almost immediately coming out, but just remember that it is Trick2g's army versus Voyboy here on the Summoner's Rift, and we do see our team comp starting out. So the first thing I want to talk about personally is this top lane matchup. Sicko Scott on Maokai versus RF Legendary on his legendary Nidalee. So interesting to see what everyone's going to start out with here. We do see a more conservative start from the Maokai. We see that Crystalline Flask and Pots, and then on the opposite side, we do see RF Legendary, knowing that he's the lane bully here, picking up that Doran's Blade and that Pot. So, in this early game, going to be really hard for Maokai to do anything other than survive in this lane. And then as we transition to mid and late game, Maokai is going to have a much larger team fight impact than Nidalee will. But Nidalee will always be able to split push, which is going to be really difficult. Really, really difficult, I would say, for Voyboy's lineup to deal with. If Voyboy can get ahead, he'll always be able to 1v1 that Nidalee, but will he be able to catch her? I don't know, I'm kind of skeptical. The other thing that's interesting at this point is I Am Matt Life has picked a less than conventional support for the bot lane. Seeing 9JX on that Thresh, he has opted to go for Gragas. Now, in the past, a lot of people have speculated that Gragas might be a solid lane counter to Thresh, but that was more when Gragas was a popular pick in general, and not so much now when he's kind of been nerfed down a little bit, not quite the power pick he used to be. But interesting to see what they start with here. Both sides opting to start with Targon's Brace. 9JX was not going to be able to get that proc, interestingly enough, but he does need that sustain anyway, and, of course, it is still an efficient way to produce gold. I Am Matt Life going to be able to push that lane out early, however, because he does have that execution proc. Ethel on Corki. Very, very popular ADC. I would say the most universal one. Pretty much fits into any team comp. Zerbic on Graves. It'll be interesting to see how it works out. And then, of course, the mid lane matchup of Yasuo versus Azir. Not want to see RF Legendary getting aggressive right here in the beginning, going in, poking out Sicko Scott. Sicko Scott opting to pot a pot interesting choice, or opting to pop a use of the flask. So probably a good choice if he does get a chance to go back here, but he may not. RF Legendary going deep, opting toward the Krugs there. Good choice. They'll know where Karthus is going to start. A Zingy on the Karthus jungle. The hard thing here is that it's difficult for Karthus to start anywhere other than Gromp. He doesn't really get a whole lot out of the jungle buffs, but we do know that he will be attacked. But when he starts Krugs, he doesn't really utilize that auto attack bonus at all because he pretty much just spams lay waste to clear the jungle. Pretty defensive start from both sides. The only person going deep is RF Legendary, and he's just trying to get consistent vision in this jungle. Of course, Sicko Scott kind of being cautious as to how he approaches in the jungle here. Looks like he might opt to try to start a jungle camp instead of going immediately to top lane. And then, of course, Karthus down there for a Zingy. Looks like he is going to start blue buff, of course, to give him the most consistent clear possible, although he may still opt to go to the Gromp. And then one of the big advantages here, obviously, if Zerbeck and 9JX are able to start those Krugs on the blue side bottom, but it looks like opposite side, Corki and I Am Matlife are also going to be able to start with the thing. So both lanes will be going to lane level 2, a little late, but admittedly level 2. So we'll see who's going to take more damage here. And it looks like I Am Matlife not taking too much at all. So this bot lane right away, they're going to get to level 2 much, much faster, so we may see a lot of aggression. Meanwhile, on the top lane, we do see RF Legendary solo starting the Gromp from what it looks like, or starting there with Trick2g, so going to be able to come to lane with level 2, but on the opposite side, it looks like Sicko Scott did the same thing, so surprisingly few people actually starting in their lane, other than, of course, Voyboy and Strompus. 9JX taking a lot of damage from the Phosphorus Bomb there, not able to dodge it despite its reduced projectile speed. And at this point in the game, I'm really just wondering exactly how this top lane matchup's going to go down and how this bot lane matchup's going to go down. Because Yasuo and Azir in the mid lane, neither one is going to be able to kill each other too early. Of course, Yasuo has to play a little bit more aggressive, but this bot lane's not one we've really seen, so I'm not sure if I Am Matlife's going to all in a whole bunch. And then, of course, Nidalee pretty much has to get ahead in the early game to be a viable pick. So a lot of pressure on RF Legendary performance this early to mid game. And then, of course, further adding to our less than conventional picks, we have a Zingy on Karthus jungle, something that Saint Vicious has said is very, very good and has opted for in the past. I'm not too sure about how this is going to work out. Obviously, in mid-game, he's just going to be able to press R and create pressure in just about any lane, but this early game clear, surprisingly going really well for him. He still hasn't needed to back yet, and Trick2g hasn't either, so they both opted to pick these junglers who clear pretty well. Trick2g, of course, really low in health at this point, and 9JX mixing that niche kind of hook. You can see that he's not quite as comfortable on this champion as I Am Matlife, who is kind of a legend on these hook champions and knows exactly how to hit them. RF Legendary playing aggressive, pushing out this lane here, not knowing that the Karthus jungle isn't really going to do much in the early game, that he will be able to get away. So a little bit of a weakness in Voyboy's team comp for sure, that they're going to let RF Legendary provide so much pressure, and at this point, it's going to be tough in this early game. We do see a pretty small CS difference, in fact, on the side of Maokai, which is pretty surprising, but a lot of that is because he opted to start with the Raptor camp and so got 3 more CS than Nidalee right off the bat from there, but no real difference in gold at this point. Voyboy's team off to a little bit of a lead just because of farm differential. Corki, of course, playing very aggressive with that Gragas support, and those two in combination have given them a very small CS lead, but not one that you shouldn't take into account. And Voyboy in the mid lane also playing aggressive, knowing Strompus lacks damage in this early game and engaging on him whenever he gets the chance, knowing he can win trades. Voyboy going in there. Looks like he might go down to the Jax. He does, in fact. The counterstrike coming in huge there. And, of course, Strompus may have stayed around a little bit too long. Would have died to that last auto attack. But between the two of them, they did manage to do enough damage to take him out. So, good play coming in from Trick2g, reading that mid lane, knowing Voyboy was just going to continue to go aggressive. And a little bit rough start for Voyboy. Definitely not a lane you want to be in behind in. Of course, Azir in the late game is going to do so much damage, comparable to Yasuo. But, of course, Azir can do it to a lot more targets. Bot lane also going pretty well. You do see Trick2g immediately following up his mid lane gank for the gank here. I Am Matlife not getting stunned there. Corki taking a lot of aggression from Graves. Trick2g opts to back off. The barrel does come in. 9JX takes a little bit of damage there. Nothing too big coming from this. We do see a Zingy as Karthus jungle rotating into the jungle. Will he do anything? Looks like he's just trying to get in that deep ward, knowing that Trick2g's position and not trying to give anything up at this point. Zingy, however, is now rotating down. Will he try to fight Trick2g in the jungle? Doesn't seem like a great matchup for him, but also couldn't go too bad when he gets that double damage proc on lay waste. In the top lane, we still see Nidalee playing incredibly aggressive, pushing up that lane as much as she possibly can. 5 CS lead, nothing too big. 9GX gets that hook into I Am Matlife. Gragas, not exactly the one you want to be hooking. Ignite goes down, 9GX flashes out. And it's safe for 9GX, but just barely. Trick2g looks like he wants to come in again, trying to put more pressure on this bot lane. They don't want to get Ethel ahead. Ethel, obviously a player who's carried a lot of Voyboy's games in the prior week, despite the fact that Ethel is known for overextending. So, solid play on Voyboy's side. I am MatLife coming in huge with that Gragas support. The Ignite scaring away the Thresh, and both supports opting to take Ignite this game. Interesting choice given that Thresh is running into a Yasuo here, who is a champion that's especially vulnerable to exhaust. Trick2g getting knocked away by I am MatLife. Nothing going to come from that one. Trick sapping a lot of experience in this bot lane, but still providing excellent pressure, trying to get Graves through this rough early game, trying to get them through this sort of counter-picked matchup. We do see at this point that Corki's got about a 10 CS lead, nothing huge. And then, meanwhile, in the mid lane, we see consistent ganks now. In this mid lane, Voyboy is going to take out Strompus, no problem. A Zingy flash wall of pain there to do the damage. RF Legendary trying to get a kill at this point. Looks like Voyboy may go down. Nope, never mind. Never mind again. Twice wrong. RF Legendary opting for that auto attack after missing the spear. Gonna kill him before that wind wall can actually come out. Looks like the auto attack. And then diving the mid lane to get that kill on his Zingy. Excellent play from RF Legendary. This is the early game advantage he wanted, and this is one of the big vulnerabilities for Voyboy's team, is that this Nidalee is going to be able to roam for free throughout the entirety of the game, simply because Maokai is never going to be able to push his lane out, and if he roams, he will be losing massive amounts of XP and gold. Overall, excellent play from Trick2g's side. Trick2g and RF Legendary, of course, coming up big in this early game. These guys are both known for their strong early game play, and Trick2g immediately opting for a Sightstone, seeing that his team is ahead, trying to secure further advantage with superior vision control. Interesting picks for both junglers. We do see the Hatchet coming out from Trick2g's side, and he obviously wants to clear that jungle as quickly as possible and roam into ganks, whereas Zingy, knowing he doesn't quite have enough CC options when he ganks, is going for that Chilling Smite. Going to be able to slow people as he comes to the lane, that 50% slow coming in pretty big, and offering a little bit more burst damage for him. He can now solo clear blue at level 5, no problem. RF Legendary continuing to play aggressive in the top lane, does go in there, using Catform to get as much damage as possible, making Sicko Scott burn his ult. And one of the big things here is that in these small trades, Sicko Scott can keep up, but as the fight continues to go on, you see RF Legendary just doing so much more damage. Scuttle Crab now secured for Voyboy's team. Wind Wall coming out as they are. Looks like they're going to attempt to do this. One of the big strengths of Karthus jungle is that he can kill dragons so quickly because lane waste is always going to do double damage. Trick2g seems blissfully unaware of this at this point, not really prepared for this early dragon attempt, and not really respecting the Karthus pick. And you can't really blame him. It's not something you see a whole lot in any kind of game, so probably just did not appreciate how much dragon control this guy can put out in the early game. I am MatLife playing aggressive here, using that knockback to get the Voyboy ultimate in there, and then Trick2g looks like he's going to go down pretty swiftly here. That counter-strike not providing much defensive options for him when Voyboy can just use that Steel Tempest and that dash through. Strompus, once again, also playing a little aggressive. Risky thing here. Uses the Emperor's Divide to keep himself safe. A Zingy may go down here. Lots of damage coming out from the Sand Soldiers. And 9JX, despite not playing a whole ton of Thresh, looking pretty solid as he goes in there. That Ignite is going to take out I am MatLife. And Sicko Scott now teleporting down to this mid lane, going right for Zerbic. 1v1 matchup I don't think Sicko Scott is looking for at this point, so maybe a little late as far as the teleport goes, but now he's backed up by Ethel, and it looks like both teams are going to back off pretty safely here. Strompus, of course, still has that blue buff, still able to push out that mid lane pretty reliably, and despite being down in health, Voyboy is a little bit scared to engage with Thresh sitting right there, who can pretty much deny all of his dashes and play pretty safe, although he does throw out that Steel Tempest to deny him. Corki, of course, using that Gatling gun and those auto attacks empowered with Sheen to out-trade Graves in those small situations, despite Graves having a BF sword. So Stromp is still opting to stay in lane. A little bit of a surprising choice. It does look like he can finish that Marilla and Omicron when he opts to back. That cooldown reduction is going to come in huge here. Gives him a lot of options as far as build path goes, denies a little bit of healing, and more importantly, Zerbic does so much damage at level 6, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is why that lane is considered favorable. RF Legendary, of course, may not get away from this one. Just too much CC coming in from a Zingy and Sicko Scott. So many kills coming in across the map. RF Legendary looks like he wants to at least get out for a 1v1 or a 1-for-1. And Maokai slowly chasing. Is he going to get him? No. RF Legendary, the legendary Nidalee, looks like he's going to be able to run away. Pounce coming off, cooldown just in time to get away from that Sapperling, and Maokai has to back off. Just not enough movement speed options to chase that Nidalee. So lots of resources committed from the side of Trick2g in that top lane, or the side of Voyboy, sending 2 people top. But meanwhile, in the bot lane for Trick2g's squad, Zerbic and Thresh using their combined burst damage to kill Ethel almost immediately. Lots and lots of action, ladies and gentlemen. So I am MatLife backing here. Does have the Sightstone already compared to the Thresh, who has MOBA boots, which I think are going to be a huge buy. I'm guessing that Gragas may buy something similar now, but mobility boots going to allow Thresh to roam really easily, make those big plays that he's known for, and get out of that lane matchup, which may not be ideal for him. Trick2g waiting in the brush there. Looks like they're trying to bait Voyboy in here. Strumpus, knowing he can do the damage here, and pushing him back, using that Azir sec to take him into Trick2g and then, of course, take him out. Zingy backing off as he throws down those late wastes. They may not want to chase here. It's pretty risky. Corki coming from the bot side, running right into 9JX. Really risky positioning here from Ethel, known for overextending, as we said before. But it looks like Greg's going to be here to back him up, along with Sicko Scott to keep him safe. And they do manage to come into that one with a kill. They have to be careful for this Azir play here. Trick2g running in with that Counter-Strike. Going to get knocked away. And nothing's going to come from the 9JX. Also looks like he may go down here. Zingy's guard this jungle, coming in huge here. 3-1 with that Chilling Smite. Looks like he's going for the Magus enchantment. Has a red buff. Doing really well here. And I am Matlife and Sicko Scott just so tanky, functioning as an excellent front line and getting these early game skirmishes off the ground so that they can get themselves a substantial lead. Voyboy himself, of course, 1-3-1, not looking so hot. With the recent nerfs to Yasuo, or the past nerfs to Yasuo, he's not quite the powerful pick that he once was, but of course, once you get to that late game, it's not really going to matter because he's still going to do just so much damage. Now, if we look at this mid lane, you can see that the farm is almost matched up evenly. Azir, of course, has that Morellonomicon, gaining both attack speed, cooldown reduction, and ability power from it. So he's going to be able to do a lot of damage with just that item, whereas Voyboy, hopefully now, will be able to finish static ship with this back, but if not, is really never going to be able to keep up with that wave clear that Azir provides. Trick2g opting to get Sheen instead of Phage here. An interesting choice from him, given that he almost always, regardless of the champion, first buys Phage. You can see that he hasn't even finished a jungle item yet. Zingy on the opposite side has opted to finish Magus, looking for more and more AP. Makes sense there. You know, even if he dies in that team fight, he's still going to be able to cast spells for 8 seconds, so he'll be doing pretty well in a lot of situations. Graves going for that Infinity Edge, and RF Legendary split pushing down that bot lane turret. Maokai, you can see, just not really able to do a whole lot there in that top lane as far as stopping pressure goes, because he just doesn't have the wave clear at this point. Obviously functioning much better in team fights as far as a tanky pick, but with RF Legendary never staying in lane, he's never really going to get the opportunity to keep up with him as far as rotations. You do see the Chalice and the Sorcerer's Shoes coming out for RF Legendary, so he has opted to switch into that AP build, just using the Doran's Blade for early game advantage as an aggressor. And then, of course, Corki still trying to finish up that Triforce. Graves still trying to finish up that IE. Now, real clear advantage to either at this point. Ethel, as long as he can get decent Sheen procs, will always be able to keep up with the Graves, but obviously if they tank a hook there, that Thresh Ignite plus his full rotation, combined with Graves' ultimate collateral damage, is going to take him out pretty friggin' quickly. So, now the big thing at this point is who's going to have control of these dragons. Voyboy's team obviously taking advantage of the first one with that Karthus, but as Trick2g's team is going to move forward into the game, they're really going to want to get that, because despite the fact that they have a 3k gold lead at this point, they don't have that first dragon, which at this point is negligible stat differences, but in the late game will become greater and greater because it is a percentage stat increase and not a flat one. Trick2g playing pretty defensive here. Looks like they're trying to get vision control on the side of Dragon, knowing that RF Legendary is split pushing top and functionally stopping the Maokai from rotating effectively. Maokai, of course, isn't going to get his teleport interrupted if he does decide to come down, but Nidalee will always be able to take that tower solo. Zerbic going a little ham here. Kind of getting a lot of ultimates from there. I am Matlife missing his ultimate completely. I'm a little shocked that that went down the way it did, but Zerbic just flashes over the wall, getting a ton of ultimates, functioning pretty well. I'd say it's a worth trade for Flash as long as they don't try to force a team fight here. But 9JX, of course, not going to take that. Hooking in I am Matlife. I am Matlife does manage to get the dash away. Zerbic playing really aggressive. Keep in mind, he does not have Flash. He does have heal, but the Thresh Lantern looks like it's going to save him. Sicko Scott sees the potential for follow-up here and has to back off with the Azir, providing so much damage in such a simple disengage. And then, of course, now that Sicko Scott is here, RF Legendary looking pretty strong in that top lane, looking set to split push down that turret, and not a whole lot the team's going to be able to do. I am Matlife looks like he may try to stop that wave from pushing in, but is it going to be enough? I highly doubt it. And at this point, Root Split Thorn looks like they're going to have their cake and eat it too. Able to take that dragon now. Looks like also maybe able to take this top turret, although RF Legendary is going to have to run instead of finishing it off, seeing Sicko Scott coming up on that red buff ward. So excellent warding from RF Legendary, not something he did quite so much when he was playing Rek'Sai in those past games, preferring to rely on Tremor Sense as a way to have, as a way to see people coming, but still pushing really well. I'm really surprised that this pick got through, and obviously it's working out quite well for Trick2g's squad. Voyboy's team consistently being forced to split up, not getting the team fights that they want, and without a full 5-man team fight, their roster looks pretty weak. The only people who are really able to outduel at this point is going to be Yasuo as we transition into the mid to late game. But in this early game, it's rough for them. This Nidalee obviously still so strong and probably able to outfight anybody as long as she doesn't, as long as she fights on her tournaments, as long as she fights those 1v1s. So curious play coming out from both sides. We do see a small CS advantage for Corki, nothing too huge, and in fact the only real CS advantage is that 50 CS advantage up in the top lane. Maokai not really having any defensive stats, rushing for the early items that are going to give him the most mobility possible, of course wanting to get items that are going to speed him up. You see the boots of mobility, and then of course he's going to offer that new item, which, forgive me, I cannot remember its name, but it gives you the speed boost, and then sort of also the Randuin's Omen slow. So those two combined doing quite well. Lots of mobility coming out from the team, actually. You can tell that they want to force the engages. You do see Static Shiv giving Yasuo some mobility, although that's pretty much part of the core combo for Yasuo, where he's going to offer Static Shiv and Infinity Edge, which with the proper runes will give you a 100% crit chance. But RF Legendary, never ever going to leave that top lane. This is his home. This is where he wants to be. Does have excellent vision control. You can see that the whole top side is warded for him. But the downside, of course, for this is that Trick2g squad has opted to not provide quite as much vision in the bot side jungle. And, you know, it's not surprising that they can only stretch so far, and they know that as long as RF Legendary's top, they have to be careful about how they push up here. But they overall are doing so well with extra vision control that Sightstone for Trick2g is just paying off so well for the team, and you can see that on the opposite side, Azingi now just trying to get a tier, opting to do as much damage as possible, but in this early to mid game, he's just not going to offer any of the utility that Jax is going to offer, both with the stun and with that early Sightstone purchase. Team trying to fight under the Azir turret here, a little bit greedy. Gragas does push them out. Voyboy locking the hook at the last possible second. Not sure if it would have hit him, but probably a safe bet regardless. Nidalee finally getting down that top tier turret, RF Legendary. This is where it gets more difficult for him because obviously those inhibitor turrets are so powerful now, but it'll be interesting to see if he does keep opting to split push. It doesn't look like they're trying to commit anyone else to that top lane to stop the split push, and he can back pretty happily here. He has a substantial amount of gold at this point in the game, so going to be able to pick up some more items, making his split push that much more lethal, and of course just giving his team that much more map pressure by continuing to be in that top lane. I'm curious to see if he'll opt to go bot lane now and push that out as well, just trying to take out as many outer turrets as possible, get as many free objectives as possible. He is going to take this red buff away, which is going to be pretty huge because one of the few options that they have for catching a Nidalee is going to be keeping her slowed and keeping her CC'd, which isn't really something they have anywhere on the team at this point. So taking the red buff away, going to be pretty huge. And of course, Trick2g now opting to push the bot lane as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a 1-3-1 split push again. RF Legendary in the top, Strumpus, Zerbic, and 9JX in the mid lane, and then of course Trick2g himself in the bot lane. This is kind of the strategy that they like to go for. And it's one that they're very comfortable running. You can see RF Legendary has that ward control to split push, has played this Nidalee a lot, and Trick2g, of course, known for split pushing, always going to try to open those gates. And I'm not sure how Voyboy's team is going to respond. Really, they need to look for picks and they need to look for team fights, but the gold advantage is pretty quickly going in Trick2g's advantage, and it looks like they may have them figured out because this is the same thing we saw last week where Voyboy's team just does so well. RF Legendary going all in there, taking about half of Sicko Scott's health for rotation. That red buff coming in huge. Sicko Scott's not going to be able to make it out, but I Am Matt Life may be able to stop RF Legendary from taking that kill, and it looks like he will. 9JX trying to play aggressive there, but knows that the wind wall is still available and doesn't opt to throw the hook, knowing Voyboy would get away anyway. Meanwhile, on the mid lane, we do see Strumpus and Zerbic pushing together. Strumpus, of course, offering enough peel for Graves that he's going to be able to do his thing in the course of those fights. He has finished Infinity Edge now, and really no armor coming out for the opposite team, so not going to be able to do a whole lot to stop those Sand Soldiers under the turret, so they're going to dissipate pretty quickly. And really, with a 5k gold deficit, Voyboy's team is going to continue to get farther and farther behind. Voyboy himself committing to that bot lane to stop the split push, and even if Trick2g does opt to duel him, it's most likely because someone else on the map will be providing pressure elsewhere. So, definitely tough for them. Definitely not the fights that they really want to be fighting, and it's kind of just a waiting game at this point for Voyboy's team. They're looking for an opportunity, but it's clear that they don't really know which opportunity they need to take advantage of. And meanwhile, Trick2g's team has a very clear plan on how to play this mid to late game. Obviously, this 1-3-1 split push is going to work out pretty well for them. They are deciding to execute it. And Azingi moving up to the top lane to try to stop Nidalee, but this is going to be rough for them because Azingi might not do enough damage to kill RF Legendary at this point, and he is just going to be able to get away. Despite the fact that Azingi can do damage, Maokai has to blow his whole CC kit to do any damage to Nidalee at all, which means that Azingi is then left unprotected. So kind of what we saw there was Nidalee able to turn, burst down the majority of Zingy's health and forces Zingy to leap out or trade his life for RF legendaries. And he's not looking to make those trades at this point, despite the fact that killing Nidalee could get his team a huge advantage, just because he himself does not want to die and give up any extra gold. Gold advantage staying at about 5k. Neither team able to take any more objectives at this point. Just one inner turret pushed in for RF Legendary, not looking to go anywhere else, likes being in that top lane. It's very clear that as long as Dragon Control is their priority, that he will stay in that top lane. However, they are now moving as 5 for this Dragon. So could this be the team fight that Voyboy's team wants? Most likely it will be if they try to engage it here, but they have to be careful about how they do, because if RF Legendary is able to fight anybody 1v1 in the fight, Voyboy is going in, goes to take down Strompus there. They are pushed away in that fight, but Zerbic now also focused on not going to be able to get off his burst damage rotation here, except he does, and manages to take out Ethel. Voyboy still opting to go in, but does back off. RF Legendary, and not a good situation here, isn't going to get the heal off and is going to go down to that Card Assault. Card Assault just paying off dividends in that huge fight, and despite the fact that they did manage to burst down Strompus and take out RF Legendary, you know, they're not going to get too much here. Obviously the gold beat has swung back in their favor a little bit, and getting this second dragon is going to be huge for them, but Trick2g decides, no, we would actually like our first dragon, so they opt to, or second dragon rather, and they opt to jump in there and steal that one. Impressive smite for Trick2g, and good coordination with him and 9JX to leap in there, get that lantern in and out, and take that dragon away. Trick2g playing phenomenally in these tournament games, and you can see as the weeks have gone on, his play has kind of stepped up. Obviously week 1 he played a lot of that Volibear, didn't quite work out for him. The lineup he had was a lot more about picking friends like Fishing for Earth and Strompus than it was about picking really solid players. And despite the fact that Fishing for Earth is obviously that god tier Fizz, he's not quite on the same level as RF Legendary, and his Nidalee RF Legendary doing so well for the team despite getting caught out there. But now we're starting to hit that mid to late game point, and this is where things are going to get concerning for Trick2g's lineup, because despite the fact that Azir is going to outscale just about everybody with how much damage he's going to be able to do, you know, Voyboy him too is also going to be able to do immense amounts of work in these team fights, and Zingy not offering a whole ton of utility, but going to be able to offer a ton of damage. And if they fight on the wrong terms, Zingy as Karthus will be able to do damage to everybody consistently and crush these team fights. So both teams trying to be careful about how they engage this. RF Legendary knows he has advantage here, trying to keep up consistent pressure now, has opted to switch to bot lane pushing. You see him doing this because now Baron is the objective that Trick2g's team wants to contest, and so by providing pressure in the bot lane, he forces the enemy team away from that Baron, which allows them to either secure vision control or secure the Baron itself, although I doubt they'll go for it at this point. It is smart positioning from RF Legendary, and knowing global objectives and knowing what value his pressure, or his solo pressure has here. Strompus getting caught out, does opt to use the Zhonya, so they have to be careful here. Voyboy may try to go in, Strompus immediately flashes out. No surprise, RF Legendary once again trying to 1v1 Sicko Scott, something he's done successfully in the past, and you can see now how poorly these trades are going. The only thing that's going to stop him from killing Sicko Scott at this point is going to be the tower. Does miss the spear there, Sicko Scott, good pathing to dodge it, and Trick2g may have overextended here. Doesn't quite have the mobility that RF Legendary does, and that tornado definitely looked like it hit, but Trick2g knowing pretty well how to dodge that and knowing the range and getting out really well there. All 4 members in the bot lane now. Excellent rotations from those core 3 members, 9JX, Strompus, and Zerbic, to move into bot lane and take out that turret. Meanwhile, RF Legendary, not afraid of anything at this point, knows that there's very few options as far as CC that can shut him down, and they need more than 2 members to kill him almost immediately, so playing really confident. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that there is an Azir in the game, so the turret kills might not mean quite as much as you think they would, although at this point, they're looking pretty solid. And of course now we see that siege coming in, despite the fact that the sand soldiers are going down very quickly. Strompus is still able to get 2 or 3 auto attacks off and chunk people out. You know, he has that Zhonya's Hourglass, he has that Merlinomicon, so sizable attack speed, sizable damage coming out from those sand soldiers, and overall, Voyboy's team has to be really smart about how they play this at this point, but it looks like they're not sure what they need to do and instead are opting to group under these towers instead of trying to make a definitive play, which Zerbic opting, you know, that Graves W there, the smoke screen is going to come in so strong because it does make it difficult for Karthus to go in. It makes Karthus difficult for Karthus to land skill shots. Sorry, slurring my words here as I try to talk too fast to keep up with these crazy high-paced challenger games. And Voyboy now going to opt to try to fight RF Legendary. Does have that red buff. May be able to stop him from getting away, but RF Legendary will finally go down to Voyboy. Voyboy knowing he has that power spike with Infinity Edge and Static Shiv, and of course the red buff as well, so RF Legendary overexpending a bit despite having some solid armor, can't quite keep up with Yasuo's damage, and this could be the turning point for the team because Voyboy, now that he can dual RF Legendary, if he can replicate that situation consistently, will be able to stop the split push alone. And of course, Trick2g, not too strong at this point, does have Lucidity Boots and that Triforce, but not a whole ton of stats there. You do see that Elixir coming out, so he is obviously going to try to go for more split pushing. Very comfortable with that. We see him roaming up into top lane, knowing that the rest of the members are on the map in the mid and bot lane. So consistent split pushing from Trick2g's side. Once again, not looking for those team fights. They do have excellent disengage options with Thresh and Azir, so really just utilizing their team comp incredibly well, despite the fact that RF Legendary was caught out by Voyboy there earlier. They are trying, however, to stop the Trick2g split push. You consistently see Sicko Scott trying to pair up with a Zingy to provide the most amount of damage possible. Once again, RF Legendary may go down here, but it looks like without the ultimate, Voyboy is going to be hard-pressed to win a fight, and Trick2g just ignoring the Maokai damage as he pushes top. A Zingy trying to win a fight here, but instead just giving up a turret for nothing, and this is exactly how Trick2g has played every game this week, using most, getting maximum value out of that Elixir by grabbing an inhibitor turret, and now at any point in the game, his team's going to be able to wander in there and take that. This is what Trick2g is all about. This is opening the gates, and Voyboy's strong, consistent 5v5 team fights aren't going to happen for him, because Trick2g is never, ever going to show up for them. He is always going to be pushing in one of those side lanes along with RF Legendary. And Voyboy's team, once again, hard pressed. They need to make good decisions. They need to try to get a Baron or a Dragon. They need to secure these objectives and get a gold lead here. But the gold lead, of course, not in their favor whatsoever. 6k for Trick2g's team. Lots of items finished out. Graves with that Infinity Edge Static Shiv, going to be able to do a ton of damage, provide a lot of pressure. Everyone on their team able to push waves pretty darn reliably. Nidalee, of course, with that cat form rotation. Jax with the counter strike and just excessive attack speed. Graves with Static Shiv, and Azir with those Sand Soldiers. So lots of wave pressure at any given moment, and really the biggest vulnerability here is Sicko Scott, because despite the fact that Maokai is, I think, a more conventional champion as far as the meta is concerned, it's just not the best pick against the Nidalee, who is so far ahead. And when they didn't shut down the Nidalee early, she's always going to be able to split push, even if she can't duel Voyboy at this point. Or at least provide split pressure. She may not be able to get a tower, but she can push those waves in. And if they get an inhibitor, that's all it's going to take. Or if they get Baron Buck, those empowered minions could be huge. So you can see Voyboy's team definitely on the back foot, excuse me. Pause is coming out here. So once again, the thing I'd like to go over is the difference in scaling for these teams. So despite the fact that obviously Karthus is going to scale amazingly well into the late game, he doesn't really have a lot of defensive options. So they are punishing this really well on Trick2g's side by either taking him out really quickly with like a Zingy Spears and following it up, or by just not opting to fight. So now Karthus, you can see, has that Magus Enchantment, does have that Haunting Guise, the tier is getting stacked, and when he gets that Seraph's Embrace, the team fights are going to continue to go in Voyboy's favor, but he's never going to find that team fight just because of the lack of engage options he has. Maokai and Gragas, of course, very strong, but they don't really, they can't really do anything against this split push pressure because neither one, Gragas doesn't have the damage to wave clear, and Maokai never will. So that is Dragon number 3, I believe, for Trick2g's squad. That movement speed bonus is going to be huge. It does play to their strengths. And at this point, you can see Strumpus and the rest of the team opting to push down the mid lane, while the remainder of Voyboy's team is going to have to commit to trying to stop RF Legendary. Once again, Sicko Scott and Zingy teaming up to try to stop him, but they have to be careful here because Zingy can go down really quickly. You did see him backing out there. Not sure if Nidalee was going to opt to turn around and try to, functionally one combo Zingy if he does land that spear, because Zingy has so little as far as defensive stacks go, and his damage just not very valuable here because he's not in a situation to use it, and he hasn't been in a good spot to land these skill shots, and without Maokai's CC to lock someone down, he's pretty heavily reliant on that, I guess, to get his damage off, and that's going to be pretty crippling as they move into this kind of late game stage. Both teams having 7 kills, and the kills haven't been the huge part here. It's obviously the objectives. 6 turrets coming out for Trick2g's side, 3 coming out from the opposite side, and not even 3, 0 functionally, because 3 of those turrets are Azir turrets. So no objectives. Darude Splitstorm, Trick2g himself they actually get out of this one despite going down. Karthus going to ult, going to take out a lot of health, taking out Trick2g, making everybody in the mid lane a little bit weaker, and it looks like they're all going to back off, knowing that without a full 5 members, they cannot exert the level of map pressure necessary to get huge advantages. They do, however, still have about an 8k gold lead, so that's continuing to rise. Voyboy running in here, no longer afraid of RF Legendary, isn't really scared of going into the jungle at this point because he knows he's going to be able to 1v1 anyone with that huge power spike. Will probably opt to buy the Blade of the Rune King soon, and that alone will give him an option to catch up. I am MattLife, very vulnerable to Strompus there. You can see that he doesn't really have a whole lot of defensive utility against that. And, you know, 32 CS, 0, 1, and 4 Gragas doesn't really have much as far as items go. Thresh either, but you can see how this gold disadvantage is crippling Voyboy's team here. RF Legendary does look like he's going to get caught out, though. Didn't really have the ward coverage to see the team coming there, and enough CC combined with all the damage coming out from Voyboy means that it's one very dead cat. Sicko Scott throwing in that Zapperling to make sure that Baron isn't going to go down. Trick2g opting to jungle on the south side, trying to get up more stats. Does have that Juggernaut perk, so he has more tenacity. Is going to be able to pretty much just take that inhibitor at some point because Sicko Scott is never going to be able to solo stop him, and his Zingy will die to him pretty easily. So, you know, I've been kind of, not to beat a dead horse here, but talking over and over again about this Maokai and Karthus kind of weakness. You know, they both need each other to kill anybody, but when you commit 2 people to a lane to get a kill, or even 2 kills with the amount of damage and CC they provide, you make the rest of your team very vulnerable to all-ins, and you make the rest of your lanes very vulnerable to split pushing. So, kind of a stylistic mismatch for these teams, and I think that's part of the reason why Trick2g has been so successful in this, is that Voyboy, obviously a very confident shot caller, very confident in team fights along with the rest of his team, but Trick2g never going to look for those team fights, going to try to run away here, and Voyboy may be able to catch up, and it'll be interesting to see how this duel pans out. Trick2g being very patient with the jumps, does have a ton of cooldown reduction, so until Voyboy is able to ult him successfully, Trick2g is almost always going to be able to get away. You see the remaining members, as Trick2g has provided that bot lane split push pressure, are now opting to go into the top lane. And the rest of the team looks like they're hovering around Baron. They could try to 3-man it, although it's pretty risky at this point. Zerbic might get spotted out by that ward. A little aggressive here. They tried to kind of sneak it by going over the wall, but it looks like at the end of the day, Voyboy's team is not going to be able to do anything to stop this. They committed too much to trying to kill Trick2g on that Jax pick, and as a result have lost Baron. This is where it gets bad for them, because not only do they have split pushing, they have those empowered minions and those empowered recalls, so there's absolutely no way Voyboy's team will be able to keep up in the amount of pressure that is being dished out here. A Zingy, once again, looks like he has finished that Void Staff, looking to go for maximum magic penetration there, trying to get the most out of his high base damages. However, you can see that he is still so very squishy. Voyboy trying to finally get the team what he wants, does opt to ult in. Strompus does Zanya's. We do see the Karthus all coming out. Strompus using his ultimate to push them all away. And Zerbic also getting caught out here. They do have that Azir turret to fall back on if they need it. RF Legendary packing off, trying to use that Frozen Gauntlet, or Iceborne Gauntlet, to get the slows down there. And a lot of ultimates burned for a single kill. This is not where Voyboy's team wants to be. Obviously, Trick2g is going to be split pushing, headed down into that mid lane, using those empowered minions to create pressure, and RF Legendary and Zerbic just not afraid, continuing to go in, really without any engage options there. They don't have to be too scared. Zerbic, however, in trouble. They will try to force that fight under tower. RF Legendary able to jump out there. Zerbic will go down. So will Voyboy and RF Legendary, the 1-for-1 trade there. 9JX opting to try to get out. Thresh not really having a whole ton of escape options. Won't be surprised if he goes down here. Does flash over the wall. I am MattLife, not convinced that that's going to work for him, but does ult through the wall, or E through the wall, and then as a result get hit by the box from Thresh. So overall, very good play from Trick2g's side, and despite the fact that they did give up a couple kills there, you can see that the gold advantage is still heavily in Trick2g's favor. 7k gold lead still, but if Voyboy's team can continue to fight fights like that one that we just witnessed, where they basically got advantage, and they may come out on top here. I was wrong about Voyboy's build path. He does opt to go for that Bloodthirster, trying to get a little bit more defensive stats against this Nidalee and against Strompus when he engages there. I would say not the best pick for split pushing, but obviously a very excellent pick for team fighting, and maybe a better option overall for dueling characters like Nidalee and like Jax. Trick2g at this point has finished the Hex Drinker, so not quite as scared of the magic damage coming out there. May now be able to solo kill that Karthus if it comes down to it, and Gragas, of course, finishing up the Glacial Shroud, getting a little bit more cooldown reduction. They want to get that ultimate as available as much as possible, along with Maokai's full rotation, so that they can get Voyboy in there with his ultimate as well. Both teams playing aggressive around this Dragon Pit. Trick2g looking for their 4th, Voyboy's team looking for their 2nd. So neither of these dragon buffs are going to be particularly impactful. The most, of course, being the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th. But both teams looking to secure it. Of course, Voyboy's team looking to get to that 3rd buff and deny Trick2g's team that 5th buff. But of course, they are going to take it, and this is going to be a pretty solid buff for them at this point in the game. Won't be huge, just because of how massive their gold advantage is, but if they can get to that 5th dragon buff, they're going to be able to win these team fights despite not having a team fight oriented lineup, just because of how many stats and how much damage that 5th dragon buff can give you. You can see them now trying to sweep out wards. They're moving as a team to get ward control on this top side of the map, and RF Legendary playing a little bit careful, is spotted by Ethel there. Has to be careful here. There's far too many members on that top side, but we do see the combination of Zerbic on Graves and Strumpus on Azir pushing out that bot lane. Strumpus able to do so much damage without getting close to Voyboy. Voyboy pretty much having to burn all of his dashes to get away there, and just rough game for them at this point. Zingy, of course, 7-1-3, but you know, when you're a Karthus who doesn't get to team fight, that 7-1-3 isn't going to come into these fights very big for you, and isn't going to have the impact they want it to. So 8-12, kills still in Voyboy's favor, but as we mentioned earlier, that doesn't really matter too much when you don't actually have any towers or any objectives. You know, almost a 10k gold lead now for Trick2g's team. This is kind of the consistency we see from them as they get into this mid to late game phase, is that they are always getting massive gold leads and then using those to further split pushing, whereas a lot of teams would use that to team fight. So clearly very comfortable. I think banning Rek'Sai was a huge mistake. Over banning this Nidalee, you can obviously see how strong that Nidalee's been. Despite having a 3-4 record, has produced a lot of global advantages, and Zerbic now gonna try to dash away as I am Matlife. Clearly not as comfortable on Dragon Season on threat. Stompus does opt to ult there. Voyboy going in for Zerbic. Will use that wind wall to full capacity. Is going to get taken out by Azir there, or rather Zerbic, as he is taken down. Ethel getting jumped in on by Trick2g. Sicko Scott going in here, trying to use those tanky stats. The ult coming out for Karthus, not going to do a whole lot to Nidalee up in that top lane, who is still providing pressure. That inhibitor does go down. So at the end of the day, despite the fact that once again Voyboy's team is getting the fights that they want, they don't have the advantage, and so they're trading even. And then on top of that, because RF Legendary doesn't have to attend those team fights, he can instead split push those lanes and get objectives like that inhibitor. And now that inhibitor is down, no one needs to be there for that lane to push. And pretty huge. We do see 2 minutes on that Baron timer. If Trick2g's team can get it, you know, those empowered super minions are going to play a huge factor here, and should give him a reliable way to close out this game. You can see, however, the vulnerabilities of the split push strategy is that as you get closer and closer into the base, it's harder and harder to get those towers, whereas in the early game, RF Legendary was easily able to split push those outer towers along with Trick2g. Now it's a little bit more difficult just because of how close it is to the base and how reliably people are going to be able to recall and home guards in to defend. So, once again, I think that this late game stage is probably an advantage to Voyboy as far as team fights, but in every other situation, Trick2g's lineup is always going to be able to come out on top here. Strumpus, 1-4-5. You know, a lot of people might not take that seriously, but when you look at his items, you see that Morellonomicon, that Void Staff, that Zhonya's Hourglass, and that Death Cap. He is going to do a ton of damage in team fights. And if you opt to fight on their terms under an Azir turret, or, you know, once Azir has set up three or more Sand Soldiers, then he's going to be able to pretty much crush anybody, be able to match a fully stacked 80 carries damage output, and everyone on that team just looking like they are ready to fight at any moment, despite the fact that they may not have advantage there. Super minions now splitting in the top lane. Voyboy on Yasuo does have enough items that he'll be able to take out those waves pretty quickly. Does lack armor pen though, and you do see meanwhile on the mid lane, Trick2g's team making excellent use of that split push pressure to get that mid lane tower. Not the mid lane inhibitor yet though, but you do see RF Legendary and Trick2g now moving together to try to take the bot lane inhibitor, systematically picking Voyboy's lineup apart to try to get this. They may get engaged on here though. RF Legendary Zhonya's at the perfect time to save himself. Trick2g using that ultimate to get as many resistances as possible as he runs away. And the defensive stats there kept him alive from that hard engage, and of course RF Legendary with an excellent Zhonya's prediction, stopping I Am Matlife from ulting him, and hence stopping Voyboy from being able to ultimate in. They are instantly now rotating to this Baron, and Voyboy's team once again picking up a 5th Azir turret, although no real ones. So, you know, looking at the scoreboard, you may be excited for that team, but then when you look at this goal differential, now 11k, you got to know that Trick2g's pretty much got this one in the bag, even if RF Legendary is going to get caught out here, which it looks like he does. Card Assault also coming in there. A little bit of overkill, but Azingi's not about to give RF Legendary another chance to get out. That 60-second death timer could come in huge here, but when Trick2g's lineup has already taken the Baron buff, you're not going to be able to get a whole lot off of that advantage. Everyone following Jax down the mid lane as he's got that Elixir of Iron, giving that little bit of move speed buff to Strompus as they run. Once again, those empowered minions are going to come in huge here. Keep in mind that Baron still gives the AP and AD buff, so just the stat differential at this point, despite the fact that I think Voyboy's lineup as a whole may have a better team fight, is pretty much a guaranteed win for Trick2g's team if they don't split up too hard or if they don't get caught out here. Now, Trick2g has gotten caught off in the past. You know, we do see plays like this from him consistently where he does try to split push a little bit too hard, and it looks like he may get caught out here, although he does have a lot of tenacity, and no fear. Trick2g's team running in. Strompus looks like he's going to take out Voyboy there. Zerbic looks like he may go down first, though. Strompus opting for the Zonius. He's going to go down pretty quickly. Voyboy getting his Zonius, or sorry, getting his Guardian Angel proc before that fight, but they do manage to pick up Strompus. So in the past, this is how Voyboy's lineup has beaten Trick2g's lineup, is they've gotten into these late game, they've won a team fight, and they've just pushed down mid as 5. It doesn't matter how many turrets the team has, because, you know, if they're all dead with 60-second death timers against a lineup like Voyboy, they will push for that win. So Trick2g's squad has to be a little bit cautious if they try to get anything here, but they are going to now get what looks like that 5th dragon buff, and 5th dragon buff plus Baron buff. Even with 4 members, this feels like a win to me, and obviously just huge stats coming out here. 9JX not afraid of running into this jungle. Even Thresh at this point can hook a minion with a flash. Gragas spamming a quick laugh for the disrespect. 9JX a little too enthusiastic for that pick on I Am Matt Life, but that empowered recall going to let him go back, buy a couple extra items, and feel better about himself after that flashy misplay. Strompus now finally up after that last pick. You're going to probably see Trick2g's team group as 5, would be my guess, although they may not have confidence in that line of play just because team fighting has never been their strong suit in these games, and RF Legendary and Trick2g, of course, still opting to go hard. Trick2g running in there, knowing he can win that 1v1 if he has to, still has that Elixir of Iron up, still has his Guardian Angel available, which is going to be even bigger, and he does opt to go into that top lane, trying to use that last wave of super minions to push in here, and those empowered minions in the mid lane going to be able to hit that inhibitor from so far away, so if they're able to just protect him, then they may be able to just get that on for free. Meanwhile, of course, Trick2g once again split pushing top lane, rest of the team going mid. This split push pressure is so impressive from the team, and oh man, Voyboy's team not going to get the team fight they want. Ethel forced to back there, and Trick2g's team just opting to back out. Strompus on the outside pushing people away. Another inhibitor going down. A Zingy going down, which is going to be huge here. Does going to try to ult there, but it's not going to really work for him. Does do a ton of damage, actually, to the whole team. Voyboy, no GA, does go down to RF Legendary Spear. I Am Matt Life running him for his dear life, and Corki, of course, barely alive on that one. And now at this point, we're probably going to see Trick2g's team push for the win. And ladies and gentlemen, this first win brought to you by split pushing and opening the gates. Trick2g's lineup playing so well. Thank you for putting up with my solo casting in this first game, as I have ran out of things to say on multiple occasions. And of course, this win for Trick2g, well earned, consistently split pushing the games. So impressive play. That was game 1, week 1 of the Omen encounter. Next up, we're gonna have Voyboy's squad versus Nightblue's squad. It'll be interesting to see if Voyboy can come back from that pretty crushing defeat at the hands of Trick2g, but we'll see. So we're going to take a brief break here while we get everyone into lobby. Remember to go check out omen.gg and vote. If you vote, you're